Every year at some point, usually over the winter for whatever reason, I get a bit Star Warsy. This has been going on for years by now. Something about it every now and then just sucks me in, and I go through anything from a couple of weeks to a couple of months of bashing as much Star Wars content as I can. Games, movies, TV shows, man, I'll watch 3-hour lore videos on parts of the galaxy's history so far back they've never even had a comic made about them, let alone a movie. I can't help it. Now, I'm not going to bullshit. I get like this when a story is set in space. If you follow this channel, you know I nerd out hard to it. But Star Wars is more than that. It holds a special place. It has ever since I was a kid. You can see why, too. The original trilogy movies are a masterclass in cinema in so many ways, but there's so much more to this galaxy than 3 movies. It's as deep as it is wide, and brother, it's wider than a Jawa with a brand new heuristic processor. But I'm gonna let you in on a secret. I prefer the prequels. The original trilogy are objectively better movies, but it's not the movies themselves I'm thinking about here. It's the stories they want to tell. The concept of the prequels. That's what got me. See, Luke was never my favourite character. The Rebellion was never my favourite era. It was too light, cheesy, you know? Sure, you watch a planet full of people get blown up, and the movies have some real we're in the shit now moments, but somehow it just never felt gritty. It always felt light. They're a trilogy of movies that make hope the central theme. So long as the Rebellion has hope, it will succeed. The Rebels, at least in those original trilogy movies, they were no clones. There was no darkness to be found, no tinge of corruption, no fragility or humanness. Luke would never turn to the dark side, even if the stories pretended that was a potential arc, and the Rebellion would never lose hope, even if they pretended that the galaxy was hopeless. But like I say, Luke's not my favourite character, the Rebellion's not my favourite era. No, my favourite character in Star Wars, it's Anakin. My favourite era, the Clone Wars. I like them because there's a grit in these stories, a realism, as ironic as that is to say.
I don't like sand.
Don't get me wrong, the prequels are fucking bonkers. They're incoherent and they have some of the most bent moments across all of Star Wars. The prequels needed 7 seasons of TV shows to make them actually hit how they should have hit all along. But don't tell me that story doesn't hit. It's in the prequels we see the story of a child, the chosen one, the one born to defeat the Sith, the story of the one who fell to the dark side, despite everything he was and all the power he had. You know Anakin's story, and you know that story is ultimately tragic. The boy with the highest midichlorian count, who's cut down, mutilated and transformed into Darth Vader. The killing blow, delivered by no one else but his brother in arms, Obi-Wan. All of this after years of being sidelined, years of watching Jedi hypocrisy, denied the right to love, and denied the support he needed most because of that love. If he was consoled about Padme, if he didn't have to watch Mace Windu try to cut down the defenseless Palpatine, would things have been different? What makes a tragedy so tragic is how easily it could have been avoided, how miscommunication, misunderstanding leads to, well, Darth fucking Vader. In the background of the story of the fallen chosen one is a story of the Republic, one that has stood for tens of thousands of years, only to be dismantled by one man playing 4D galactic chess. When I was a kid, I didn't necessarily get all of what the prequels were trying to say. They had more lightsabers, and little old me was sucked in by that alone. Like, it's fucking sick, innit? We all love lightsabers. But with each annual Star Wars phase, that yes lightsabers turned to, fuck, this hurts. The original trilogy are about saving the galaxy. The prequels are all about watching the galaxy cave in on itself. watching evil rise from the ashes and watching how it's met with thunderous applause. It's a story about brothers turning on brothers, apprentices turning on masters, masters turning on apprentices, and clones turning on commanders. People who we come to sympathise with, feel for, and maybe see as the greatest characters in the Star Wars galaxy, but people who we all know are destined to an end they can't help but execute, to Order 66. It might have taken 7 seasons of TV to explore that properly, but damn if it isn't some of the most heartfelt shit in this galaxy. All the battles, all the bonding, all the good moments and overcoming we see across that series, all of the fighting for good, only then to see it all come crashing down as time creeps closer to the events of Revenge of the Sith. Watching a battalion of soldiers who literally moments before had painted the face of their commander, Ahsoka Tano, on their helmets, who now have no choice but to execute her, with those very same helmets on their head. Watching Rex shiver as he fights desperately to fight something embedded into his mind, something he can't escape. Part of the allure of space to me is that it represents hope, a chance to restart or reassess who we are, a chance to move into the stars and escape the very earthly problems we all face on this planet. The rot of corrupt governments, puppet master billionaires and all of that shit. But that's not what would happen. It's not what happened in Star Wars. Despite who knows how many systems, how many years of a free democratic republic, the Empire would be born out of people's frustrations, greed, rightful issues, and not so rightful issues. How leaders can be manipulated and facts can be controlled, and how one man can play an entire galaxy in the name of seizing power. Star Wars might take place in a galaxy far, far away, but the problems faced there are as earthly as our own. And it was this, combined with that Buddhist idea of inner peace, balance and light up swords that gave Star Wars that special spot in my pimply prepubescent brain. It's what keeps it there now. The original trilogy, as good as they are, they're not this. They're overtly optimistic movies, almost naively optimistic, pushing that message of hope so far up you can't help but fucking choke on it. But the actual Star Wars galaxy is one filled with horror, corruption, evil, and darkness. Star Wars is a fucking tragedy, and I'm a cunt for a tragedy. It's the trilogy that showed the weakness of democracy, the way puppet masters can pull strings and turn a free, open democracy into an authoritarian empire, how the very leaders and champions of that free republic can be manipulated into celebrating its collapse. It showed how a few orchestrated problems can lead to panicked reactions and panicked people being manipulated. I mean, look at the real world, at these fucking ratbag politicians, and don't tell me you don't see Emperor Palpatine type scheming going on. But fuck real life, we don't have telekinesis and lightsabers. Star Wars did something else, which my naively romantic self can't help but get a bit wheezy for. It showed me a boy, innocently but madly in love, and how he can be pushed into all manner of evil because of his love. A love that is chastised by his brothers and banned by his brotherhood, but is pure and powerful in his heart. How being ignored by the people close to you pushes you to someone who doesn't care about you at all, but absolutely knows how to promise you the world. It showed, clear as day, how you can pave a road with good intentions that leads straight down to hell. See, Anakin's my favourite character. By extension, so is Darth Vader, and that's because I find him relatable. Don't get me wrong, I'm not planning to wajum some younglings, but I can put myself in Anakin's shoes, and see myself falling into a similarly misunderstood but dark path, definitely between 18 and 22 when you're fucking unhinged anyway. No, I don't plan to rule the Earth or the galaxy or breathe through a tube, but I can see how I can fuck up because of my feelings, good feelings, and create a prophecy by naively trying to avoid it. I'm a bit of a romantic, and I can slip into being a bit superstitious too. I grew up watching fucking Star Wars, I mean, are you surprised? And I'm a bit of a cunt when it comes to women, and when it comes to love. I've always had my insecurities, my fears. I mean, who doesn't? These exact kind of fears, though. What if the person I love dies? What if they betray me? What if I give myself to them for 10, 20, 30 years and they get diagnosed with terminal cancer? What if they just leave? How far would I go if I was pushed to absolute desperation? These are questions I can't answer, but when I see them play out, I can't help but wonder if I could end up in the same boat as someone like Anakin. I can't help but wonder if in my own way, I could slip into the dark side and not even notice it. When I look at Anakin's story, I see the story of a boy who needed help, a boy who needed advice, but someone who could only find the silhouette of that in a man that is fucking evil incarnate. He could only find it from Sith Lord Darth Sidious. He was only given it so that Sidious could disarm him, lull him, and then strangle him into the dark side. And when he does give into it, he takes away the very thing, the very woman who he delved into the dark side to protect. Then, I watch that man, turned into a machine, carry the unbearable weight and unrelenting anger with him across all the years that lead up to the original trilogy. Anakin's story hits something primal inside of me. It's just one of the many things that does hit me so much in this galaxy. How about the idea of the good not being so good after all? In the original trilogy, the Jedi are romanticized and idealized. They were the holy protectors of the galaxy. But then, in the prequels, they weren't. They claimed to be, tried to be, but they'd become blind, complacent, and hypocritical. Look, ask Count Dooku if you need that explained. He'll tell it best.
The truth.
The truth.
And it wasn't just the Jedi. I saw a Senate filled with the galaxy's leaders, almost none of them noticing the strings being pulled in the background by the very man sat at the centre of the Senate, and the ones who did being almost powerless to stop it, completely outmatched by him, and completely outnumbered by all of those who saw nothing or applauded the changes. The prequels cover a lot of shit. How we can create a self-fulfilling prophecy lost in our own fears of it becoming true. How leaders and people can be blinded to reality when they're faced with an engineered threat. How politicians, even if there are some good, are outnumbered to an extreme degree by those who are lying and those that are blind. But the prequels, as much as they open my eyes to this dark undertone in Star Wars' galaxy, well, they're still the prequels. Jar Jar Binks, bizarre dialogue, weird and incoherent plot points. They're conceptually masterclass, but they're far from a perfect execution. They can be a hard watch, is what I'm saying. The prequels, in my eyes, add layers to the universe of Star Wars that absolutely makes it a better world. But they, as movies, aren't exactly the best Star Wars stories. But nowadays, the prequels aren't the only things offering that gritty contrast in the galaxy to the original trilogy. Now we have shows like Andor, movies like Rogue One, and games like Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor. And man, have you fucking played those games? If you haven't, you might want to watch out because I'm gonna spoil one of the best pieces of Star Wars media out there. Cal's story. That to me is Star Wars' universe being shown off at peak standards. It's the perfect tightrope of light and dark they pretended Luke's story was in the original trilogy. The perfect executions the prequels definitely would not be. The grit and that cheesy hope that makes Star Wars so perfectly enchanting. The critical message of hope is there, but never have I seen grit in this galaxy like I have in these games. From the very opening of Fallen Order, watching a friend cut down by an Inquisitor, to the powerless terror of playing a Padawan face to face with Darth fucking Vader, and then Jedi Survivor, 5 years of fighting and nothing changing. Watching that kid turn into a man infinitely more capable, but equally, if not more hopeless than ever. A man betrayed, hurt, scarred, and eventually pushed to the dark side. A man raised by an order, taught a way of life that has had every trace of itself erased in one night. And it's not just Cal. There are other characters out there. Cassian Andor, Rex, Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, on top of the everyday people we so occasionally get to see. Everything so far is before the original trilogy in the timeline, and everything so far is people losing everything, from hope to life, from love to happiness, from innocence to safety. But all of this, as long as we just forget about the Disney trilogy, and trust me, they're fucking forgotten, all of this leads us, chronologically, to that cheesy original trilogy. A New Hope. A fucking idealistic, naive farm boy who winds up saving the galaxy alongside a badass princess, a 10-foot amalgamation of fur and raw strength, and a smuggler with a shitty ship.
What a piece of junk!
When you bundle all of that together, all of this massive story told across fuck knows how many different everything, I don't know, man. For me, it puts this universe, this story told across so many mediums, somewhere special in my heart. When I see that clip of Luke staring at Tatooine's two suns setting, and that orgasmic soundtrack, I get a bit teary-eyed. I can't help it, because when you add all of this together, there is so much fucking weight in that, because even if Luke never saw it all, we know how much has gone on just to lead up to that very point. We know how many sacrifices, how much darkness, how many futile attempts for better have led up to the one where there is finally success, and it comes when the galaxy is at its most hopeless. When you bring all of that together, you know, it really is something special. Hope after decades of hopelessness in a galaxy that has had almost lost every single trace of it. And that's what makes Star Wars so perfect. 30 to fuck knows how many years of watching a galaxy cave in on itself, only then for a hope to finally be born and a galaxy finally saved from itself. In one sense, these things massively contrast each other. The original trilogy is just completely different to anything else, in terms of atmosphere, in terms of everything. But when you put it all together, you get the most hopeless galaxy ever, turned into something beautifully optimistic and beautifully hopeful. Just as long as you forget about the fucking Disney movies.